The Galactic Council's decision to feed a human child to an apex predator backfired spectacularly. In a secure facility on a distant planet, 10-year-old Scott Crawford stood face-to-face with a Zoraxian beast, his small hand buried in its thick fur. The creature, known throughout the galaxy for its ferocity and insatiable appetite, nuzzled against the boy's palm like an overgrown house cat. Counselor Novak, a high-ranking Gamelon diplomat, watched the holographic feed with mounting disbelief. The emergency session he had called to address humanity's rapid expansion into space had taken an unexpected turn. The test designed to expose humanity's violent nature had instead revealed something far more perplexing. Hours earlier, Gamelon operatives had snatched Scott from his bedroom on Earth, transporting him across light years to this fabricated habitat. The boy, still in his pajamas, had no idea he was part of a galactic experiment. He explored his new surroundings with childlike curiosity, oblivious to the danger that lurked in the shadows. The Zoraxian beast emerged from the underbrush, its massive form dwarfing the human child. Scott froze, his eyes wide as he took in the alien predator. The assembled council members leaned forward, anticipating the swift and brutal end to their experiment. But the attack never came. Instead, the beast approached Scott cautiously, its nostrils flaring as it caught the boy's scent. Scott, displaying the fearless nature that had propelled humanity to the stars, reached out his hand. The gesture that should have cost him his life instead became the foundation of an unlikely bond. As Scott petted the Zoraxian beast, murmurs of shock rippled through the council chamber. Representatives from a dozen alien races struggled to comprehend the scene unfolding before them. This was not the outcome they had expected when they agreed to Counselor Novak's radical proposal. The implications of this unexpected interaction reverberated beyond the council chambers. News of the abduction and the failed experiment spread quickly, igniting a diplomatic firestorm. Earth's governments, outraged by the unauthorized taking of a child, demanded immediate explanations and reparations. Meanwhile, Scott remained blissfully unaware of the interstellar crisis he had inadvertently sparked. His world had narrowed to the confines of the habitat and his new alien companion. As the Zoraxian beast playfully nudged him, Scott laughed, the sound echoing through the facility and the council chambers alike. Counselor Novak's mandibles clicked nervously as he processed the failure of his plan. The test that was meant to justify preemptive action against humanity had instead forced the Galactic Council to confront their own prejudices. Humanity, it seemed, possessed qualities they had failed to anticipate or understand. As the Council grappled with the consequences of their actions, one thing became clear. Their assumptions about human nature had been fundamentally flawed. The sight of a human child forming a bond with one of the galaxy's most feared predators challenged everything they thought they knew about this young species. The incident marked a turning point in galactic relations. Humanity, once viewed as a potential threat to be contained, now presented a mystery to be unraveled. The diplomatic crisis triggered by Scott's abduction would reshape the balance of power in the galaxy, with Earth emerging as a force to be reckoned with. As negotiations began and accusations flew, Scott Crawford remained at the heart of the storm, blissfully petting his new friend and unwittingly changing the course of galactic history. As Scott Crawford continued to bond with the Zoraxian beast, the repercussions of his abduction rippled across the galaxy. Earth's governments, once divided by petty squabbles, found themselves united in righteous fury. The unauthorized taking of a child had crossed a line that could not be ignored. In a secure facility beneath the Pentagon, Admiral James Harper stood before a holographic display of the galaxy, his weathered face illuminated by the soft blue glow. "Gentlemen," he addressed the assembled world leaders, "we're dealing with a situation unprecedented in human history. Our response must be swift, decisive, and above all, successful." The leaders nodded in agreement, their faces grim with perseverance. Harper continued, "I've assembled a team of our best and brightest. We're going to bring Scott home, and we're going to send a message to the galaxy that humanity is not to be trifled with." As Harper spoke, Dr. Elena Vasquez was already at work in a nearby lab, poring over data streams flowing in from a sympathetic alien scientist. Her dark eyes widened as she noticed a pattern emerging from the chaos of numbers and graphs. "This can't be right," she muttered, running the analysis again. But the results were the same. She grabbed her tablet and rushed to the briefing room, her lab coat billowing behind her. "Admiral," she interrupted, breathless from her sprint. "I've found something you need to see." Harper raised an eyebrow but gestured for her to continue. Dr. Vasquez tapped her tablet, projecting her findings onto the main display. "Scott's presence is affecting the behavior of all the creatures in the enclosure, not just the Zoraxian beast. Look at these pheromone readings. They're off the charts. It's as if he's communicating with them on a chemical level." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Harper was the first to speak. "Doctor, are you suggesting that humans have some sort of universal translator built into our biology?" Vasquez nodded slowly. "It's more than that, sir. If I'm right, we could be looking at a key to interspecies communication on a scale we've never imagined. The potential for ecosystem management alone is staggering." Meanwhile, light years away, Scott Crawford was blissfully unaware of the interstellar crisis he had sparked. He sat cross-legged in a clearing, surrounded by a menagerie of alien creatures. The massive Zoraxian beast he had named Zora lay curled protectively around him, while smaller creatures perched on its back or lounged nearby. Scott's pajamas were torn and dirty, but his eyes sparkled with excitement as he addressed his audience. "Okay, everyone," he said, his voice carrying a strange, soothing quality. "Today we're going to learn about Earth games. This one's called Simon Says." As Scott explained the rules, the creatures watched with rapt attention. Even the newly introduced predators, meant to escalate the danger, seemed content to listen and observe. When Scott began the game, the clearing erupted into a cacophony of movement as the aliens attempted to follow his instructions. Hidden cameras captured every moment, transmitting the incredible scene to the stunned Galactic Council. Counselor Novak watched, his mandibles twitching in a mixture of awe and concern. He had set out to prove humanity's violent nature, but instead had uncovered something far more profound. A harsh voice cut through his thoughts. "This has gone on long enough, Novak." The draconian ambassador loomed over him, scales glinting in the low light of the chamber. "We must terminate the experiment now, before it's too late." Novak felt a chill run down his exoskeleton. "Surely you don't mean—" "I mean exactly that," the draconian hissed. "The boy, the beasts, all of it. We'll say there was an unfortunate accident. The council will mourn, make reparations, and that will be the end of it." But Novak knew it wouldn't be the end. He had underestimated humanity once. He wouldn't make that mistake again. As the draconian ambassador stormed off to gather support, Novak made a decision that would alter the course of galactic history. With trembling appendages, he initiated a secure quantum communication to Earth. Admiral Harper's face appeared on the screen, surprise quickly replaced by stern focus. "Counselor Novak, I presume," Harper said, his voice cold. "I hope you're calling to arrange the safe return of Scott Crawford." Novak's voice quavered as he spoke. "Admiral, listen carefully. The boy is in grave danger. A faction within the council plans to terminate the experiment. Permanently. I can help you rescue him, but you must hurry." Harper's eyes narrowed. "Why should we trust you?" "Because," Novak replied, "I've seen what that child can do, and I believe it could change everything." As Novak shared the coordinates of the secret facility, Earth's rescue mission sprang into action. Sleek ships dripping with advanced weaponry slipped out of hidden hangars and accelerated towards the stars. But they weren't the only ones on the move. The draconian fleet, alerted to the humans' approach, began to form a blockade around the planet where Scott was held. As Earth's ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel, they found themselves facing a wall of alien warships. Admiral Harper stood on the bridge of the flagship, teeth clenched as he surveyed the tactical display. The draconian ships outnumbered them 2-1, their weapons charged and ready. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "they're hailing us." Harper took a deep breath, squaring his shoulders. "On screen," he ordered. As the face of the draconian commander appeared, Harper knew that his next words could mean the difference between peace and interstellar war. Unaware of the confrontation unfolding above, Scott Crawford continued his games with his alien menagerie. As he laughed and played, the boy remained the unwitting center of a galactic storm, his unique abilities holding the potential to reshape the future of interspecies relations forever. The peaceful scene in the habitat was shattered by a sudden tremor. Scott stumbled, steadying himself against Zora's massive form. The Zoraxian beast growled, her ears flattening against her skull as the ground beneath them continued to shake. "What's happening?" Scott asked, his voice tinged with worry. The other creatures in the clearing began to stir, their agitation palpable. As if in answer, a wave of hot air washed over them, carrying with it the acrid smell of ozone. Scott wiped sweat from his brow, noticing for the first time how uncomfortably warm it had become. The temperature was rising rapidly, turning the once pleasant habitat into an oven. "This isn't good," Scott muttered, his mind racing. He remembered a cave he had discovered during his earlier explorations. "Come on, everyone, follow me." With a gesture that seemed almost human, Zora nudged the smaller creatures forward. Scott led the procession through the underbrush, acutely aware of the rising heat. The leaves beneath their feet were already beginning to curl and brown. As they reached the cave entrance, a distant boom echoed across the sky. Scott looked up, shielding his eyes against the glare. Far above, pinpricks of light flashed against the darkness of space. The battle had begun. Admiral Harper's fingers dug into the arms of his command chair as another volley of plasma torpedoes streaked past the view screen. "Evasive pattern Delta 3, he barked. The ship lurched, narrowly avoiding the searing energy weapons. "Sir, Draconian vessels are moving to cut off our approach vector," the tactical officer reported, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. Harper's mind raced through possible strategies. They were outgunned and outnumbered, but he'd be damned if he'd let that stop him from rescuing Scott. His eyes fell on the planet below, its magnetic field shimmering faintly on the sensors. "Helm, take us into a low orbit," Harper ordered. "Weapons, recalibrate our energy cannons to match the planet's magnetic resonance frequency." As the crew scrambled to comply, Harper opened a channel to the rest of the fleet. "All ships, form up on us. Prepare to fire on my mark." The Earth vessels plunged towards the planet, weaving through the Draconian formation. Commander Zexathor, leader of the alien blockade, watched with mounting frustration as his prey slipped through his grasp. "Destroy them!" Zexathor roared, his scaled fists pounding on his command console. "I want those human ships reduced to atoms!" But as the Draconian fleet moved to pursue, Harper sprung his trap. "Now!" he commanded. The human ships fired as one, their energy weapons dramatically amplified by the planet's magnetic field. Arcs of supercharged plasma lashed out, enveloping the Draconian vessels. Propulsion systems failed, weapons went offline, and shields flickered and died. Harper allowed himself a grim smile. "Target their engines. Disable, don't destroy. We're here to rescue Scott, not start a war." As the space battle raged overhead, Counselor Novak raced through the corridors of the secret facility. His many legs clicked against the polished floor as he hurried towards the habitat control room. He had to fix this, had to make it right. The control room was in chaos. Technicians of various species scrambled to address the cascading system failures. Novak pushed his way to the main console, his mandibles clicking nervously. "What happened?" he demanded. A Gamelon technician looked up, her bioluminescent skin pulsing with stress. The Council's override commands conflicted with the base system protocols. It's caused a cascade failure in the environmental controls. Novak's compound eyes widened in horror. "The habitat is overheating." "Yes," the technician finished. "We're trying to restore control, but it's going to take time." Time they didn't have. Novak made a decision that would change everything. "Deactivate the force field," he ordered. The technician gaped at him. "But sir, the predators—" "Do it," Novak snapped. As the force field flickered and died, he turned and ran towards the habitat entrance. He had to reach Scott before it was too late. In the cave, Scott and his menagerie of alien creatures huddled together, seeking relief from the oppressive heat. Zora lay curled protectively around the boy, her massive body shielding him from the worst of the temperature. "It's okay," Scott murmured, stroking Zora's fur. "We're going to be all right. He wasn't sure if he was trying to convince the animals or himself. A scrabbling sound at the cave entrance made them all look up. Counselor Novak appeared, his alien form silhouetted against the bright light outside. The predators tensed, growling low in their throats. "Scott," Novak called, his translator struggling to convey the urgency in his voice. "We must leave now. It's not safe here." Zora rose to her full height, positioning herself between Scott and the perceived threat. The other creatures followed suit, forming a living barrier. Scott placed a calming hand on Zora's flank. "It's okay," he said, his voice carrying that strange, soothing quality. "He's here to help us." To Novak's amazement, the creatures relaxed, parting to allow Scott to approach. The boy's ability to communicate with these animals was unlike anything he had ever seen. "What's happening?" Scott asked as he reached Novak. Before the counselor could answer, the ground shook violently. In the distance, they heard the unmistakable sound of ships entering the atmosphere. "The rescue team," Novak explained quickly. "But they're not the only ones coming. We need to get you to safety." As they emerged from the cave, a new sound cut through the air, the whine of energy weapons. A group of draconian soldiers materialized at the edge of the clearing, weapons trained on Scott and Novak. "Step away from the human, counselor," the lead draconian hissed. "The boy comes with us." Novak moved in front of Scott, spreading his arms wide. "I cannot allow that," he said, his voice steady despite his fear. "This child is under the protection of the Galactic Council." The standoff stretched on, neither side willing to back down. Scott's mind raced, searching for a solution. He could feel the animals behind him, tense and ready to attack. If this erupted into violence, there would be no winners. Just then, the foliage at the edge of the clearing rustled. Major Marcus Steele emerged, leading a team of Earth's elite soldiers. They moved with precision, quickly surrounding the draconian forces. "Lower your weapons," Steele commanded, his voice hard as steel. "You're outnumbered and outgunned." As the two groups faced off, Scott realized that the next few moments would determine not just his fate, but potentially the future of human-alien relations. He took a deep breath, knowing that whatever happened next would change everything. Everything. The world seemed to hold its breath as the various factions faced each other, weapons raised and tensions high. Scott's mind raced, searching for a solution that wouldn't end in bloodshed. He could feel Zora's warm breath on his neck, her massive form a comforting presence at his back. The other creatures huddled nearby, their eyes darting between the humans and the draconians. Suddenly, a series of high-pitched chirps echoed through the clearing. Scott turned to see a group of small, rodent-like aliens scurrying towards them. An idea formed in his mind. "Wait," he called out, his voice cutting through the tense silence. "I have a plan." Major Steele's eyes narrowed. "Scott, get behind me. We're here to take you home." But Scott shook his head, his gaze fixed on the tiny creatures. He knelt down, extending his hand. To everyone's amazement, the rodents approached without fear, their antennae twitching as they sniffed his fingers. "I need your help," Scott whispered, that strange, soothing quality infusing his words. The creatures chittered in response, their eyes gleaming with an almost human intelligence. In a flurry of movement, the rodents scattered in all directions. They darted between the legs of the draconian soldiers, climbed trees, and burrowed into the underbrush. The clearing erupted into chaos as the aliens tried to track the lightning-fast movements. "Now!" Scott shouted, grabbing Novak's arm and pulling him towards the tree line. Zora and the other large predators formed a protective circle around them, blocking the draconians' line of sight. Major Steele, quick to catch on, signaled his team. They laid down suppressing fire, forcing the draconian soldiers to take cover. In the confusion, Scott, Novak, and their alien menagerie slipped away into the dense foliage. Above the planet, Admiral Harper's flagship emerged from behind the moon, catching the draconian fleet off guard. Energy weapons lanced out, striking the enemy vessels with pinpoint accuracy. "Target their propulsion systems," Harper ordered, his voice steady despite the chaos of battle. "Disable, don't destroy." The bridge crew worked with practiced efficiency, their fingers flying over holographic displays. The draconian ships, caught in the crossfire between Harper's fleet and the planet's magnetic field, began to drift helplessly in space. On the planet's surface, Dr. Elena Vasquez hunched over her portable analyzer, her brow furrowed in concentration. The readings from Scott's biosignature were unlike anything she had ever seen. "Major," she called out, her voice tinged with excitement and concern, "you need to see this." Steele jogged over, his rifle still at the ready. "What is it, Doctor?" Vasquez pointed to a holographic display hovering above her equipment. "Scott's pheromones aren't just affecting the animals. Look at the plant life around us." Steele's eyes widened as he took in the data. The vegetation in their immediate vicinity was changing, growing at an accelerated rate and developing new, complex structures. "It's as if his presence is jump-starting evolution," Vasquez murmured, her mind racing with the implications. "We need to find him, fast. There's no telling what long-term exposure could do to this ecosystem." Meanwhile, Scott, Novak, and Zora found themselves navigating a series of winding tunnels beneath the enclosure. The air grew cooler as they descended, a welcome relief from the heat above. "How did you know about these tunnels?" Scott asked, his hand resting on Zora's flank as she guided them through the darkness. Novak's mandibles clicked nervously. "I didn't. This facility has been here for centuries, but we never fully explored its depths. There were always rumors of ancient structures buried beneath the surface. But—" His voice trailed off as they rounded a corner and found themselves in a vast, dimly lit chamber. Massive pillars of an unknown metal stretched up into the darkness, their surfaces etched with intricate swirling patterns. "What is this place?" Scott whispered, his voice filled with awe. Before Novak could respond, the chamber hummed to life. Lights flickered on, revealing banks of alien technology that had lain dormant for millennia. Holographic displays sprang into existence, filling the air with swirling star charts and streams of data in an unknown language. Scott stepped forward, drawn by an inexplicable urge. As his hand touched a central console, the entire chamber pulsed with energy. The holographic displays shifted, focusing on a single point in space. "Incredible," Novak breathed, his compound eyes reflecting the dancing lights. "This technology, it's far beyond anything the Galactic Council possesses. Scott, I think it's reacting to you." As if in response to Novak's words, a beam of light enveloped Scott. He gasped, his eyes widening as information flooded his mind. Star systems, alien civilizations, and cosmic events beyond human understanding flashed through his consciousness. Just then, the chamber's entrance exploded inward. Major Steele and his team burst through, weapons raised. They froze at the sight before them. Scott bathed in alien light, Novak staring in wonder, and Zora standing protectively nearby. "Scott!" Steele called out, his voice echoing in the cavernous space. "Step away from that thing. We don't know what it's doing to you." But Scott barely heard him. His mind was elsewhere, racing through the cosmos, absorbing knowledge that no human had ever possessed. In orbit, Admiral Harper received an urgent transmission from Earth. The face of the UN Security Council representative appeared on his view screen, looking grave. "Admiral, we've authorized the use of the Graviton Disruptor. The device is ready for deployment at your command." Harper's eyebrows furrowed. The Graviton Disruptor could end this conflict in an instant, disabling all advanced technology in the system. But it would also strand his own forces, leaving them vulnerable. As Harper weighed his options, alarms blared across the bridge. "Sir," his tactical officer shouted, "we're detecting massive energy fluctuations from the planet's surface." On the planet below, the ancient structure housing Scott and the others began to pulse with power. The ground trembled and arcs of energy danced across the sky. In the underground chamber, Scott stood at the center of a storm of light and data, his eyes glowing with an otherworldly intelligence. Major Steele and his team held their ground, unsure whether to approach or retreat. Novak watched in fascination, his scientific mind struggling to comprehend what he was witnessing. Zora, ever loyal, remained by Scott's side, seemingly unaffected by the swirling energies. As the various factions converged on this nexus of human and alien destinies, the fate of not just Scott Crawford, but potentially the entire galaxy, hung in the balance. The ancient technology, dormant for eons, had awakened. And at its heart stood a young boy from Earth, suddenly thrust into a role that could reshape the cosmos. The chamber hummed with increasing intensity, the alien machinery responding to Scott's presence in ways no one could have predicted. Major Steele, Dr. Vasquez, and their team watched in a mixture of awe and apprehension as the holographic displays became more complex, showing what appeared to be the history of entire civilizations in fast-forward. "Scott!" Dr. Vasquez called out, her voice barely audible over the thrumming energy. "Can you hear me? What are you seeing?" Scott's eyes, still glowing with an eerie light, turned to face her. When he spoke, his voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "I see everything," he said, his words resonating with newfound knowledge. "The rise and fall of 1,000 worlds, the birth of stars and the death of galaxies. And I think I understand why I can do what I do." As Scott's consciousness expanded, embracing cosmic truth beyond human comprehension, the various factions surrounding him faced a choice that would shape the future of interstellar relations. The draconian forces, their command structure in disarray, hesitated at the edge of the chamber. Earth's military, led by the determined Major Steele, stood their ground, unsure whether to intervene or observe. And high above, Admiral Harper's finger hovered over the control that would activate the graviton disruptor, a decision that could alter the course of this encounter forever. The fate of young Scott Crawford, and perhaps the entire galaxy, hung in the balance as the ancient alien structure pulsed with long-dormant power, its secrets finally awakening after eons of silence. Silence. The air crackled with energy as Scott stood at the heart of the ancient structure, his eyes glowing with otherworldly knowledge. Suddenly, the chamber shuddered, and a pulse of energy erupted from the central console, expanding outward in a rapidly growing sphere. Major Steele barely had time to shout a warning before the energy wave washed over them. The lights on their equipment flickered and died, leaving them in the eerie glow of the alien holographs. Outside, the draconian forces found themselves equally powerless as their vehicles and weapons shut down. "What just happened?" Dr. Vasquez asked, her voice tinged with both excitement and apprehension. Before anyone could respond, the chamber came alive with new projections. Vivid, three-dimensional images filled the air, depicting a race of beings unlike anything they had ever seen. Tall, ethereal creatures with multiple limbs and eyes that seemed to contain galaxies within them. "The precursors," Scott whispered, his voice carrying an authority beyond his years. "They were the first, the ones who seeded life throughout the galaxy." The hologram shifted, showing Earth in its primordial state. The assembled humans watched in awe as the precursors manipulated the planet's early life forms, guiding their evolution over millions of years. "We were their project," Scott continued, his eyes fixed on the unfolding history. "Humans were designed to be caretakers, guardians of life itself." Counselor Novak clicked his mandibles in astonishment. "This changes everything we thought we knew about galactic history." As the revelations continued to unfold, Scott felt a new awareness blossoming within him. He reached out not with his hands, but with his mind, connecting to the ancient systems that surrounded them. With a thought, he activated a hidden protocol. The ground beneath their feet rumbled as massive energy barriers sprang to life, encasing the entire structure in an impenetrable field. Outside, the draconian forces found themselves cut off, unable to breach the sudden fortification. In orbit, Admiral Harper received an urgent transmission. "Sir, the graviton disruptor has been activated. All advanced tech in the system is going dark." Harper watched helplessly as his ship's systems began to fail, one by one. The combined effect of the alien structure's energy field and the graviton disruptor had created a perfect storm of technological disruption. Back in the chamber, Dr. Vasquez approached Scott cautiously. "Scott, what are you experiencing? Can you describe what's happening to you?" Scott turned to her, his eyes now pools of swirling starlight. "I understand now, Dr. Vasquez. Our connection to animals, to nature itself, it's not a coincidence. It's our purpose, encoded in our very DNA by the precursors." As Scott spoke, Zora nuzzled against him, seemingly unaffected by the chaos around them. The bond between boy and beast took on new significance in light of these revelations. Counselor Novak, seeing an opportunity amidst the chaos, stepped forward. "We need to seize this moment," he said, his voice filled with urgency. "Scott, can you use this technology to broadcast a message to all factions?" Scott nodded, understanding intuitively. He focused his thoughts and the chamber's holographic displays shifted, projecting Novak's image far beyond the confines of the structure. "Attention, all forces," Novak began, his voice echoing across the planet and into space. "We stand at a crossroads of galactic history. I propose an immediate ceasefire and open negotiations. What we have discovered here changes everything." Outside the structure, Commander Zexithor of the Draconian forces found himself in an impossible situation. His troops were grounded, their weapons useless. He listened to Novak's broadcast, weighing his options. "Commander," one of his officers hissed, "what are your orders?" Zexithor's scales rippled as he considered the magnitude of the situation. "We have no choice," he finally said. "Signal our acceptance of the ceasefire. We will hear what they have to say." As tensions began to ease, Scott turned his attention to the injured soldiers from all sides of the conflict. Guided by some deep instinctual knowledge, he used the precursor technology to emit waves of healing energy. Wounds closed, pain eased, and a sense of wonder spread through the gathered forces. Major Steele, watching this display of power and compassion, made a decision. "Dr. Vasquez, stay here and document everything. I need to establish a secure perimeter and get word to Admiral Harper." As Steele organized his team, working in unprecedented cooperation with Novak and the Draconian forces, Dr. Vasquez threw herself into studying the alien technology and its interaction with Scott. "The implications are staggering," she muttered, her fingers flying over her surviving equipment. "If humans are genetically engineered to influence evolution, it could explain so much about our history, our impact on Earth's ecosystems." Meanwhile, on Earth, the global situation was reaching a boiling point. News of the alien encounter had leaked, and governments worldwide found themselves facing unprecedented pressure for transparency. In the UN Security Council chamber, emergency sessions were underway. "We can no longer hide the truth," the Secretary General declared. "It's time for full disclosure about our place in the galaxy." As the hours ticked by, the various factions on the alien world found themselves in a state of uneasy truce. The precursor structure had become a neutral ground, where former enemies cautiously interacted, united by their shared awe at the revelations. Scott, at the center of it all, continued to explore his newfound abilities. He could feel the pulse of life around him, from the smallest microbe to the towering alien flora. The true scope of humanity's role as galactic caretakers was only beginning to unfold. As night fell on this distant world, the assembled representatives of Earth, the Draconian Empire, and the Galactic Council prepared for negotiations that would shape the future of interstellar relations. And at the heart of it all stood Scott Crawford, a young boy from Earth who now held the key to unlocking humanity's true potential and their place among the stars. As the negotiations on the alien world stretched into the night, Scott Crawford found himself at the center of a rapidly changing situation. The precursor structure hummed with energy, its systems responding to his thoughts and emotions in ways that both thrilled and terrified him. Over the following days, a tenuous peace settled over the assembled factions. Admiral Harper, his fleet rendered inert by the combined effects of the alien technology and the graviton disruptor, made the difficult decision to establish a ground base near the ancient structure. The Admiral's weathered face bore the strain of command as he organized his stranded crew into work details. "We need to secure a perimeter and assess our resources," Harper instructed his officers. "Until we can re-establish contact with Earth, we must assume we're on our own." Meanwhile, Dr. Elena Vasquez wasted no time in setting up a makeshift research station within the precursor building. Her eyes gleamed with excitement as she pored over the wealth of data streaming from the alien consoles. "Scott, can you try interfacing with this terminal?" she asked, gesturing to a pulsing crystalline structure. Scott nodded, placing his hand on the smooth surface. Instantly, his mind was flooded with information. schematics for advanced terraforming equipment, blueprints for clean energy systems, and countless other technological marvels. "It's incredible," Scott breathed, his eyes wide with wonder. "Dr. Vasquez, I think I can access their entire scientific database." As Scott and Dr. Vasquez delved deeper into the precursor knowledge, Major Steele and his team worked alongside their former draconian adversaries to fortify the growing settlement. The unlikely allies combined Earth engineering with alien tactical expertise, constructing a series of interlocking barriers and watchtowers. Commander Zexthor, his scales glinting in the alien sunlight, surveyed their progress with grudging approval. "Your species may be young," he hissed to Steele, "but you are not without skill." Steele nodded curtly, years of military training barely concealing his discomfort at working with the reptilian alien. "We all want to survive this," he replied. "Cooperation is our best chance." As the days turned to weeks, the stranded groups began to form a cohesive community. Counselor Novak took charge of the diplomatic efforts, organizing regular meetings between the faction leaders. In one such gathering, the Gamelon representative addressed the assembled group. "We must put aside our past grievances," Novak clicked, his mandibles twitching with emotion. "Our survival depends on our ability to work together." Admiral Harper leaned forward, his hands clasped on the makeshift conference table. "Agreed. But we need to establish a clear chain of command. We can't have 3 separate power structures if we're going to function as a single unit." The discussion continued late into the night, but eventually, a provisional governing council was formed. To everyone's surprise, Scott found himself nominated as a symbolic figurehead, his unique connection to the precursor technology making him a unifying figure among the diverse groups. As Scott's role in the community grew, so did his bond with Zora. The Zoraxian beast's intelligence seemed to evolve rapidly, mirroring Scott's own expanding abilities. One morning, as Scott took Zora for a walk along the settlement's perimeter, he was astonished to hear the creature's thoughts in his mind. "Scott, friend," Zora's mental voice rumbled. "Danger approaches." Alarmed, Scott reached out with his heightened senses, scanning the horizon. In the distance, he detected a faint energy signature, growing stronger by the second. Without hesitation, he sprinted back to the command center, Zora loping easily beside him. "Admiral," Scott called out, bursting into the room, "there's a ship entering the system." Harper's eyes widened. "Are you certain? Our long-range sensors are still offline." Scott nodded emphatically. "I can feel it. It's different from your ships or the draconian vessels. I think it might be the Galactic Council." The news spread quickly through the settlement, causing a ripple of unease. The delicate balance they had achieved suddenly felt precarious in the face of outside interference. As the mysterious ship drew closer, Scott felt an overwhelming urge to act. Guided by an instinct he couldn't quite explain, he made his way to a previously unexplored section of the precursor structure. There, hidden behind a shimmering energy field, he discovered an ancient communication array. Without fully understanding how he knew what to do, Scott placed his hands on the control interface. The array hummed to life, and Scott felt his consciousness expand outward, reaching across the vast distances of space to touch the approaching vessel. "This is Scott Crawford," he projected, his thoughts carrying clearly to the Galactic Council ship. "We request a peaceful meeting. The situation here is complicated." As Scott's message echoed across the cosmos, the settlement below prepared for a pivotal encounter. Admiral Harper, Counselor Novak, and Commander Zexthor stood side by side, a united front facing an uncertain future. And at the center of it all, young Scott Crawford, with Zora by his side, waited to bridge the gap between their newfound community and the arriving Galactic Council representatives. The alien sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the hastily constructed buildings of the settlement. As darkness fell, all eyes turned skyward, watching for the first glimpse of the approaching ship that would determine their fate. Fate that would determine their future. The tense silence was broken by a low, thrumming sound that grew steadily louder. Scott felt Zora press against his leg, her powerful muscles taut with anticipation. "There," Admiral Harper said, pointing to a bright speck in the darkening sky. The speck grew rapidly, resolving into the sleek form of a Galactic Council ship. Its iridescent hull gleamed in the last rays of sunlight as it descended towards the makeshift landing pad the settlement had hastily prepared. Scott took a deep breath, centering himself. At 11 years old, he stood straighter and taller than he had when this adventure began, the weight of responsibility evident in his stance. He reached out with his mind, feeling the pulsing energy of the precursor structure behind him. With a thought, he activated the settlement's defense systems, causing a shimmering energy barrier to materialize around them. The Galactic Council ship touched down with barely a whisper, its advanced technology allowing for a perfect landing despite the rough terrain. As the ship's ramp extended, Scott felt a ripple of tension pass through the assembled group. High Counselor Xandor emerged first, his imposing figure casting a long shadow in the fading light. His scales shimmered with an opalescent sheen, and his eyes, vertical slits of deep amber, scanned the area with predatory sharpness. Behind him came a diverse group of aliens, scientists clutching data pads and security personnel with hands resting on their weapons. As Xandor approached, his gaze fixed on the energy barrier. His forked tongue flicked out, tasting the air. "Explain this unauthorized use of precursor technology," he demanded, his voice a low, resonant hiss. Admiral Harper stepped forward, his back straight and his voice steady. "High Counselor, I'm Admiral James Harper of Earth. We've prepared a full report on the events that led us here." He gestured to the others. "Allow me to introduce Counselor Novak of the Gamelons and Commander Zexthor of the Draconian Empire. Together, we've built something remarkable here." Xandor's eyes narrowed. A human, a Gamelon, and a Draconian working together? This is unexpected. Counselor Novak clicked his mandibles, a gesture of affirmation. "Indeed, High Counselor. Our cooperation has led to significant diplomatic progress. We've created a functioning society that integrates various species peacefully." Commander Zexthor nodded, his scales rippling. "We've combined our strengths. The settlement's defenses are a testament to what we can achieve together." Scott stepped forward, Zora at his side. With a thought, he deactivated the energy barrier, allowing the Galactic Council delegation to enter. "High Counselor, if you'll allow me, I can show you what we've discovered." Xandor's gaze shifted to Scott, his expression a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. "And who might you be, young human?" "I'm Scott Crawford," he replied, meeting the alien's gaze steadily. "I have a connection to the precursor technology. Let me demonstrate." Scott closed his eyes, reaching out with his mind. The air around them shimmered, and suddenly they were surrounded by holographic displays. Star charts, complex equations, and schematics for advanced technology floated in the air. Dr. Kellenar, a willowy alien with large multifaceted eyes, gasped in amazement. "Extraordinary! The boy is interfacing directly with the precursor systems." High Counselor Xandor's expression remained impassive, but his tail twitched, betraying his interest. Impressive but concerning. Such power in the hands of any one group could destabilize the entire galaxy. I propose that the Galactic Council assume control of this planet and its artifacts. Scott felt a surge of protectiveness. Without fully understanding how, he activated another precursor system. The ground beneath them rumbled, and in the distance, massive structures began to rise from the planet's surface. A shimmering field of energy expanded outward, enveloping the entire planet. "I'm afraid that won't be possible, High Counselor," Scott said, his voice firm despite his youth. "This planet is under our protection now." Xandor's eyes widened in surprise, then narrowed in calculation. Before he could respond, Zora stepped forward. To everyone's amazement, the Zoraxian beast approached one of the holographic displays. With precise movements of her snout, she began manipulating the data, rearranging complex equations with apparent understanding. Dr. Kellenar's multifaceted eyes seemed to spin with excitement. "Incredible! The beast shows signs of advanced intelligence. High Counselor, we must study this phenomenon. The research potential is enormous." Admiral Harper saw his opportunity. "High Counselor, I have a proposal. We establish a joint research facility here, under shared jurisdiction. Earth, the Galactic Council, and our allies would work together to study and apply precursor technology responsibly. Xandor was silent for a long moment, his tail swaying as he considered. Finally, he spoke. Your proposal has merit, but I must consult with the full council before making any decisions. We will require time to deliberate. Counselor Novak stepped forward. Of course, High Counselor. In the meantime, perhaps you'd like a tour of our settlement? We can show you firsthand what we've accomplished here. As the group began to move, Scott felt a wave of relief wash over him. They had made it through the first hurdle, but he knew the real challenges were just beginning. He looked up at the star-filled sky, wondering what the coming days would bring. The settlement buzzed with activity as its inhabitants prepared for the potential influx of researchers and diplomats. Fields were expanded, buildings reinforced, and new protocols established for sharing precursor knowledge safely. Through it all, Scott and Zora remained at the heart of the community, a living bridge between humanity, alien races, and the ancient legacy they had uncovered. As the alien sun began to rise on a new day, High Counselor Xandor prepared to return to his ship. The fate of the settlement hung in the balance, with the next 24 hours promising to reshape the future of human-alien relations and the balance of power across the galaxy. Galaxy. The settlement held its collective breath as the new day dawned, the alien sun casting long shadows across the hastily constructed buildings. High Counselor Xandor's shuttle descended from the orbiting Galactic Council ship, its sleek form glinting in the early morning light. The air thrummed with tension and possibility. Scott stood tall at the entrance to the precursor structure, Zora's warm presence a comfort at his side. He felt the ancient technology pulse beneath his feet, responding to his heightened awareness. As Xandor's shuttle touched down, Scott took a deep breath, centering himself. The High Counselor emerged, his scales shimmering with an otherworldly iridescence. His amber eyes fixed on Scott, narrowing slightly as he approached. Young human, Xandor said, his voice a low rumble. I trust you are prepared to demonstrate the full extent of your connection. Scott nodded, his hand resting on Zora's head. I am, High Counselor. With a thought, he activated the precursor systems. The air shimmered, and a holographic display materialized before them, a three-dimensional map of the galaxy rotating slowly in the air. Gasps of awe rippled through the assembled crowd. The map was impossibly detailed, showing not just star systems and planets, but also pulsing points of light scattered across various sectors. These points, Scott explained, gesturing to the glowing markers, represent other precursor sites. There are dozens, maybe hundreds, spread throughout the galaxy. Xandor's tail twitched, betraying his interest. Extraordinary, he murmured, circling the display. The implications of this are far-reaching, Admiral Harper finished, stepping forward, which is why we believe a joint effort is not just beneficial, but necessary. The High Counselor studied the humans and aliens gathered before him, his expression unreadable. Finally, he spoke. The Galactic Council has reached a decision. The crowd held its breath. This settlement will be granted autonomy under a unique joint governance structure. A collective sigh of relief washed over the assembly, followed by a ripple of excited murmurs. Xandor continued, Earth, the Galactic Council, and representatives from the Gamelon and Draconian factions will form a new administrative body. Together, we will oversee the research and application of precursor technology. Admiral Harper, Counselor Novak, and Commander Zexthor moved forward, their faces solemn as they prepared to sign the historic accord. As they did so, Scott felt a surge of energy from the precursor structure. The ground beneath their feet vibrated, and a section of wall slid open, revealing a hidden chamber. Dr. Vasquez rushed forward, her eyes wide with excitement. Incredible, she exclaimed, examining the sleek machinery within. This appears to be advanced terraforming equipment. The applications are limitless. As the scientific team swarmed around the new discovery, Zora padded forward. To everyone's amazement, she approached one of the terraforming devices and began interacting with its interface, her snout moving with precise, deliberate motions. Dr. Kelnar's multifaceted eyes spun rapidly. Fascinating. The Zoraxian beast is demonstrating an unprecedented level of technological comprehension. This collaboration could revolutionize our understanding of both precursor tech and xenobiology. In the days that followed, news of the settlement's success spread rapidly across the galaxy. Ships from various civilizations began to arrive in orbit, their crews eager to contribute to the growing pool of knowledge. The planet transformed into a hub of scientific and diplomatic activity, with researchers and ambassadors from countless worlds working side by side. Scott, now more confident in his abilities, proposed the creation of an educational program to ensure responsible use of precursor technology. "We need to train individuals from all species," he explained to the newly formed Administrative Council. "It's crucial that we share the benefits of this knowledge equally across the galaxy." The Council approved his proposal unanimously, and soon the settlement was home to a diverse array of students and teachers. Humans worked alongside Gamelons, Draconians, and dozens of other species, sharing not just scientific knowledge, but cultural experiences as well. Months passed, and the once makeshift settlement flourished into a thriving metropolis. The Zoraxian beasts, under Scott and Zora's guidance, became integral members of the community. They assisted in construction projects, exploration missions, and even helped care for the children of various species. On the first anniversary of the Galactic Council's arrival, a grand ceremony was held. Representatives from hundreds of worlds gathered to witness the activation of the first large-scale precursor terraforming project on a nearby uninhabitable planet. Scott stood at the control interface, Zora by his side. With a deep breath, he placed his hands on the console. Energy surged through him, and the massive terraforming array hummed to life. In orbit above the barren world, enormous satellites began to glow, projecting fields of energy onto the planet's surface. "The transformation has begun," Dr. Vasquez announced, her voice filled with wonder. "Within a few years, this dead world will be teeming with life." Admiral Harper stepped forward, placing a hand on Scott's shoulder. "You've done more than just activate a machine, son. You've given us all hope for a brighter future." As the ceremony concluded, Scott led a procession to the precursor structure. Humans, aliens, and evolved animals walked side by side, a living testament to the new era of cooperation. Inside, they gathered around a newly discovered faster-than-light communication array. Scott placed his hands on the controls, and Zora pressed her snout against the interface. Together, they activated the device. A beam of energy shot into the sky, carrying a message of unity and invitation to the farthest reaches of the universe. As night fell, Scott stood with his parents, John and Sarah Crawford, who had traveled across the stars to join their son on this distant world. They gazed up at the sky, marveling at the glittering expanse of the galaxy that was now open to them. "I'm so proud of you, Scott," Sarah said, her eyes glistening with tears. John nodded in agreement. "You've changed the course of history, son." Scott smiled, patting Zora's head. "We all have," he replied. "This is just the beginning." As the stars twinkled overhead, Scott thought about the incredible journey that had brought him here. From a terrified abductee to a bridge between worlds, he had helped reshape the very fabric of galactic society. And yet, he knew that the greatest adventures still lay ahead, waiting to be discovered in the vast, uncharted expanses of the universe.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel. And for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.